After we left the Hodag Country Ramble in Wisconsin, we headed over to Munising, Michigan. We were heading there to catch the ferry to Grand Island. Before we did, we stopped in Munising and had a drink at By George Brewing. They are attached to the deli, but the deli happened to be closed on this Sunday. So we ended up ordering pizza from the place across the street. The wood-fired pizza from whatever the name of this place was amazing. Anyways, we hopped on the ferry. The ferries are $23 for adults and then $10 for your bike. That also includes the day pass to be on the island, and it's a very short ferry ride, basically pontoon boats. Took the ferry over, $33. We had rented a cabin. The cabin was $120, and it was basically, very rustic. There's only 2 on the island, and they're basically just more of like a little bunk bed situation. There is a propane heater in there. We didn't turn it on, but yeah, there's fire pit out back, picnic table, and a little porch area with some chairs, but very rustic. The one we picked was really cool, though, because it was just right off the trail in the woods a little bit, but then on the other side of the trail, we could walk down to the beach. So that's what we did that night. We walked over, we had a beer, and we just kind of hung out by the beach for a while before we went back and made some more, late night snack kind of around the fire type thing. There are campsites. I think there's 19 official campsites on the island. I didn't look into the price because we decided we wanted to go with the cabin too, in case it rained, which it did. You're also allowed to wild camp on the island or stealth camp, whatever you want to call it. You just have to be 100 feet away from anything, trails, water, cliffs, stuff like that. But you're not allowed to have fire. So I think if you're going to go, it'd be worth reserving one of the campsites or one of the 2 cabins if you can. I don't know because, we went on a rainy day a week after the summer season, a week after Labor Day. So it was less crowded, but I would guess this place probably gets a little more crowded in the summer and you'd probably want to plan ahead. The reason we wanted to go there is because some of the guys in Cleveland for Joy Machines, Bill in particular, had suggested it in the Discord group and said this is a ride not to be missed. So in the morning we got up, we got on our bikes. It was drizzling. It wasn't pouring or anything, but it was, a light rain. There we were. It was supposed to be a beautiful ride. So what we were going to do is ride the perimeter of the island. We did leave our stuff, our bags, on the porch of the cabin. We called Forest Service and asked if that would be an issue. And they said, the next party is arriving at 1 o'clock or something like that, so long as it's out of there before then. That's how we were able to ride without all the stuff on our bikes, because we did bring everything you need to sleep, because like I said, these cabins are just rustic. It's basically, kind of like that gym mat on a bunk thing. So we didn't bring like air mattresses or anything, but I did bring my sleeping bag and a quilt and a pillow and then, clothes to be warm. As far as the riding goes, I think it's 22 miles to ride around the perimeter of the island, which is what we did. That's a mix of old carriage trail, which would be like more simple gravel riding. But then, the park describes some of the riding as mountain biking. And I think that's pretty right on. I was fine with the Gunner and the 55s, and Aaron and Ben were fine on their gravel bikes, which is the Gorilla Monsoon for Ben, All City, and Aaron's Crust Bombora. They both have fairly wide tires on there, but with the trails being wet and some of it being a little rocky and rooty, you definitely want something reasonably hardy. This is not road bike territory for sure. You could get away with a normal gravel bike, just like always. It would be just having to pay a little bit more attention. You do kind of, in the direction we went, you do kind of climb up. The other side of the island is where these big, beautiful cliffs are. Just absolutely stunning. The GoPro, I tried to capture it a little bit, but I'll put some of the photos I took at the end of this video that really show what it's like. Lake Superior is beautiful. The water is, when you're down by it, just crystal clear. You can look right through to the bottom, like all the little stones. If you're on one of the stony beaches, there's also some sandy beaches. Yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful. Then from up on the cliffs, it just looks almost bluish and turquoise-like. I mean, it looks tropical. Some of the prettiest water I've seen anywhere. One thing to know is Lake Superior does not get warm. The average temperature in the summer is like 50 degrees. So yeah, you could take a quick dunk if you wanted to, but I wouldn't head here with the intention of like, I'm going to spend all day swimming in Lake Superior. Lake Superior is so deep, it just always stays very cold. It even moderates the temperature around the area. Grand Island itself has, a long history, obviously, with the contact of, the French fur traders. It was the tribes we used to call the Chippewa who lived there at the time. I don't know how to pronounce the name that they use for themselves, so I'll just put that on screen instead of butchering it. But yeah, so it was basically a fur trading post for a long time. And then in the early 1900s, I believe, it was William Mathers who was the president of Cleveland Cliffs, who bought the island. Cleveland Cliffs, a little local connection. They're a Cleveland company, and they were basically an iron company, but they did tons of shipping on the Great Lakes. And there's actually one of the big freighters is a museum in the harbor right by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. And it actually is the William G. Mathers, so named after that president. So they owned the island for a long time. They turned parts of it into resorts, and some of these structures are still there. There's even some cabins and stuff that you'll see that are much older than that. There's some that pre-Civil War and stuff like that. They owned it all the way up until 1990, I believe, and then they sold it to the U.S. Forest Service. They actually grandfathered in some of the residents who have these 100-year-old summer cottages in one part of the island they call the Thumb. So that area is actually private. There is one part you kind of ride through a little bit and see some of them. There are spots that are inaccessible to the public because they're private property, which makes for kind of an interesting thing. I guess the residents were in favor of this happening. And Cleveland Cliffs, after William G. Mathers died, actually logged a lot of the island for a while. Back to the riding. The riding was great. Like, they call them mountain bike trails, and I guess if you go through the interior of the island, there's some old logging roads where you could do more mountain biking. We didn't do that. With the weather being average, we kind of did our loop and then got on the ferry. But even though some of the riding was fun, like I said, there were some fast, rooty, rocky descents and some climbs because some of the cliffs are like 300 feet. This is more of a sightseeing ride, even though there is some technical terrain that's fun to ride. Like, you don't want to pass up the opportunities to see what's there, especially because you could kind of ride by a couple of the cliff and overlook sections and you would miss them. And like, one of the beautiful ones is just, 20 feet down a trail. But if you were just kind of trying to focus on your ride, you would never go there and you'd miss some of the prettiest stuff that you could imagine. I would think of it as like, I'm going to spend my day like kind of sightseeing and have fun on the bike. And if you had more time, it would probably be worth checking out the trails on the interior of the island. Like I said, I just can't speak to them because we didn't do it. One thing to note is there's a bridge that is supposedly out, but even at the ferry place, they told us she put air quotes around saying the bridge is out. And it's not strong enough for anything heavy to go across anymore. She's basically saying, go around the gate, don't take the detour, you'll miss some cool stuff. You're fine on your bikes. And there was nothing unsafe. So I definitely am not overstating the scenic nature of this place. Even the rain couldn't put a damper on our mood. So it was awesome. The ferries in the summer run every hour on the hour up until 6 o'clock. Actually, the second day we stayed is when they changed the fall schedule, when they run only till 4 o'clock. They are open air. So on the way back, the rain picked up when we were done riding. There is water on the island in a couple spots. Right when you get there at the visitor center, there's a little visitor center that you could check out some history. There's a little boat in there right now that has a history on the island. There's interpretive signage along the way, which, is one of my favorite things. So the group's all used to being held up by me reading all the little signs everywhere. So after leaving the island, taking the ferry back across, we started driving. We had a spot in the Lower Peninsula, so we crossed over the Mackinac Bridge again, which is pretty amazing. I already gave my bridge facts in an earlier video in this series. We had a camp spot booked at a recreation area that was supposed to have really cool mountain bike trails. We were looking at the radar and the whole Lower Peninsula was just covered in green. It was going to rain. It was going to rain all night. We stopped in this little town whose name I can't remember, but they had like a Swiss village vibe. I guess there's lots of ski resorts around there as well. We're sitting at this brewery getting dinner, and as we're sitting there and it's pouring rain and it looks like it's going to pour rain all night, we actually just made the decision to drive home. We figured, why go set up a tent in the rain, spend a wet night to not be able to ride our bikes again? Not a big deal. If you watch this video and the other two videos, we had an awesome trip to Michigan, Upper Peninsula, and then into Wisconsin. So it was like, hey, let's call it and make the drive home. And we did. Still had 6 hours to go. Didn't get home till midnight. You can't win them all. So anyways, I'm going to do a little slideshow here of photos from the entire trip, starting when we first got into Michigan and our first night in St. Ignace. Because in the other videos, I said I would show photos and then I just kept forgetting to put them in at the end. So thanks as always for watching. If you want to support the channel some more, we do have a little store below with some cool stickers and bandanas, stuff like that. Consider channel memberships. It's fine if you don't, just hit that like button for me. It helps out a lot. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.